episode 321 of the podcast, we are talking about the pillars of happiness and how to prioritize health and happiness to help you grow and succeed in your business. We're also talking about some typical roadblocks that people have that prevent them from living healthy, happy lives. And then my guest shares some killer advice on how to take control of your time. What's up, friend? Hey, welcome to the Grow Your Video Business podcast. I am Ryan Coral from Studio Sherpas, and this is the show for corporate filmmakers that want to build the business of their dreams through sustainable production practices. I've been doing this work for 18 years. I want you to be able to do this work for even longer. If you feel like this is your calling, that you were made to be a filmmaker and that you want to build a life that is profitable, you want to build a business that is profitable, this is the place to hang out. Before we get into the episode, I want to share with you, as you are building your video business, you might be frustrated, you might be stuck, you might be annoyed, you might want to be making more money, you might be just hitting a roadblock with like booking clients that aren't good fits. And maybe you're at a spot where you're like ready to hire an employee. You need an editor. You've got backlog. If you are just experiencing some frustrations in your business, do I have the workshop for you. I created a totally free workshop where I share some of the best things that I've done, some of the best things that I've learned and applied in my business over the last 18 years. I want you to get this workshop, watch this workshop, and apply the things that have worked for me, the things that I've learned, the mistakes that I've made, so you could avoid those and then, learn much faster. You can watch this workshop by going to studiosherpas.com/workshop. You just punch in your email address, and then bada boom, bada bing, you can watch the video. It's really, really good. It's helpful, and it's helped a lot of people. A lot of people have gone through the workshop. And anyway, that is my gift to you. Now, let's get into this amazing episode. Such good content. Hopefully, you can write some things down because Dr. Wong talks about some really smart things that can lead you to a happier and healthier life. So let's roll the tape and get into this episode. What's up, friends? Hey, welcome to another episode of the show. Today with me, I have Dr. Wong, who is a naturopathic. How do you say that, Ellen?
You did it. Naturopathic.
Okay.
Yeah, you did it.
Man, such a fancy doctor that I can't even say. She is a speaker and the chief happiness. I'm struggling. The chief happiness officer for entrepreneurs and executives. She's got over a decade of experience, and she helps her clients identify the roadblocks that prevent them from living healthy, happy lives. Her signature Pillars of Happiness framework guides her clients to build successful businesses while elevating their health, finding more inner peace, and taking back control of their time. And that is how I first met her, was when she shared these pillars in Nashville at the Mike Kim Impact and Influence Conference. Ellen, it was a pleasure to meet you, and your talk was so good, and I'm so glad that you're with us here on the show today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an absolute honor. It's very, very nice of you.
Is there anything that, for somebody who struggles saying the word naturopathic, any help, any advice on a word like that? Anything?
Do it slowly.
From your doctor? Do it slowly. Well, how did you stumble into this world? And maybe you didn't stumble. Maybe that's not a good word. But how did you come into this world of becoming a chief happiness officer? Where does that come from? What does that actually mean to you?
Well, I feel like it's a cool title, first of all.
It's totally cool.
No, I didn't invent that at all. I wish I were that creative. I'm totally not. I discovered it really, a little bit of the backstory is that I've spent probably, like you said, over a decade, 13 years or so, at the time of this recording, treating patients with anxiety and depression. That was a journey I went through. It was something that I was very, very passionate about. And one of the things that I realized over the years is that I have a lot of tools to help people combat anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
Most people, though, get to the point where they're kind of like, okay, I kind of want more. And I say this often, like health and well-being is not simply the absence of disease, which I think in the conventional medical system, and I have nothing against medical doctors. I think they do a great job doing what they do. It's just we have come to define health simply as the absence of disease. And it's not true. Like I have seen plenty of patients where their blood work comes back completely fine, like normal in medical terms, it's normal. They don't feel good though. So then what happens? Like who do we go to see for help when we want more than just the absence of disease, right? When we want to flourish and feel energetic and vibrant and joyful, like who is that person? And ultimately, like we don't really have that person. Really. Right now, I think there's a lot of coaches who are moving into this field, and I think it's fantastic. But then I remember sort of researching this, and I discovered that, there's some really big companies like Google. I don't know if they still have one, but they used to have a chief happiness officer. And that person's responsibility was to increase the well-being, life satisfaction, and happiness of the people who work there. And when I started doing more of this research and diving into it, I think one of the biggest misconceptions about happiness is that we always assume that it's like at the end of some arbitrary goal. We said like, if this happens to me, I will, if I accomplish this, I will feel happy. And it could be like from an entrepreneur, it could be like, oh, if I hit my first 6 figures, I'll be happy. If I get my first client, I'll be happy. From a personal perspective, if I meet the perfect partner, I'll be happy. Like there's all these, if and then. Yeah. Right. And I think the biggest misconception is that happiness is actually how you get there. It's the journey along the route. And if you struggle with finding happiness along the way, happiness isn't going to magically show up at the other end. And it's a really it's an interesting, it's actually how our brain works. It's psychology. Like once we hit a goal, whatever goal that is, big or small, we get a massive dopamine hit, which is like this happy, kind of chemical that gets us really excited. And then it just dissipates. Like it naturally gets absorbed back into your body. And then you feel down again. So what do? We find the next goal. And so we spend our whole lives chasing these things. And it's really what we're doing is chasing dopamine hits in our body. And I just started to see this pattern a lot in clients. I saw it in myself because that's what we're taught. Like we grow up with this story, right? And so ultimately, I think what led me down this path was just being on my own journey of anxiety and depression and, given a clean bill of health by my medical doctor because, again, everything measured okay. Right. But I was not happy. And I was like, but that can't be it. Like our life, happiness is the most fundamental human goal. So then why don't we talk about how we feel happy more?
Man, I love that. So good. Your talk in Nashville, I was like, oh, this is so rich, so much to unpack here. I tell, I've got 3 kids and I'm like, glass half full, like the world is my oyster. I'm not leaving this room. I'm launching from it. These are just like natural, like it's very easy, I think, in most cases. When I'm down and that, I send a Marco Polo to a couple of my buddies, they're like, whoa, dude, like this is like, thank you so much. Like we remember that you actually are human and that you have bad days. But it's just like, I'm so quick to kind of move past the thing. And there's probably like some, I should probably see a therapist at some level because maybe I'm not dealing with things that I should be. But, I talk a lot with my kids, like, hey, you've got to choose. You have to physically, emotionally, whatever, you have to choose to be happy. Right. This is a choice. And anytime they're upset or they're mad at me, I'm like, I mean, you can be mad at me, but let's just rewind here and think, how do we get to this spot? And what did you do? Like, what were you responsible for? And if you want to choose to feel like this, you can, but you don't have to, right? It's a choice. The way that you're feeling is a choice. Is there a better way, for me to explain that to my kids and even for myself, when I'm down, frustrated, and annoyed? Is there a better way to think like that? Is that a harmful way for me to talk to my kids?
It's not. It's not at all. Not at all harmful. It sounds very obvious to me that you have a very optimistic mindset, and I think that's definitely one of the key to people who do flourish is training this optimistic mindset. And so I love that you talk to your kids about this, because I think, I mean, they're lucky. They're really lucky. I think there is a generation, especially like even my family, that generation didn't grow up really talking about mindset. Like things were just seemed very practical, and like we didn't have these conversations, and we didn't dive into emotions in the way we think that much. And so I think it's fantastic that you're saying this to your kids. And my whole philosophy around like choosing happiness is that if you know what you can choose from, it works really well, because you're making a choice.
Yeah.
There are some people who may not have explored this through no fault of their own, because it was never shown to us.
Yep.
And so for those people who may struggle a little bit with the word choose, and they're like, well, I don't know how to, then I just flip it and I say, okay, then create happiness. Like, what's one step you can take today? What is that? What would a happy person in your situation do? What's one step you can take to get closer to that? So I think there's like, it's sort of semantics, but it's sort of the way I think about it. I'm like, if you can choose it, choose it. If you feel lost and you don't know what to choose from, then create it. Create it for yourself, because it's probably, it's quite individual, right? Like what really gives us happiness. And so create it. Like you always have the opportunity to create it.
That's really good. It's because like and I'm like sort of playing here, but in reality, it's so easy for me to like shift my, like, okay, no, like I've got so much to be thankful for and whatever. Like that I'm very grateful that comes naturally to me. But, you know, I've got at least one kid that it doesn't come very naturally to this kid. And so when I'm saying like, well, you just got to choose. It's your choice. This child of mine is probably like, well, I don't know, like, but to even have that tool of like, hey, create it, and what would, you know, think about a happy person, like what would they choose in this moment to be happy? I think that's a good tool that you have there.
Thanks.
Well, let's dive into. I would love to talk about some of the pillars. I know we don't have enough time to probably cover all of them, but I'm curious to know if is there one tool or technique that, you know, with all of the people that you talk with and all of the study and everything that you've done, or you're just like, man, if the majority of people would just do this one thing or approach their day or life like this would actually solve a lot of problems or a lot of challenges. What might that one be?
If I absolutely only could pick one,
you absolutely only can,
I would say take control of your time. I never thought about taking control of your use of time as a factor in happiness. And the reason I stumbled upon that is during my honeymoon. At this point, I was already really sort of like deep into this concept of happiness and studying it and what it means. And I remember my husband coming to me and saying, you know what, we should go to the happiest place on earth for our honeymoon. I was like, we're going to Disney World? Like, I don't want to go to Disney World for my honeymoon. And he's like, no, it's not Disney World, it's Bhutan. I'm like, what's Bhutan? Like, what is this? And so, and he sent me a couple of articles to read, and I was completely fascinated. It's this tiny, tiny little country. It's like nestled in the Himalayan mountains. There's like one, you know, runway that can fly into it, 2 planes. Like, it's so tiny. Nice. And they have this thing called the Gross National Happiness Index. They are the only country in the world that measures happiness as something that is more important than their GDP. And I love it. Like, I love that they have taken a stance on this and really done their best to create policies and things that support this concept of happiness. And I read their whole index, like the science of how it got, it developed the way it did. And there's a couple of things in there that were fairly, like, okay, like, you know, health and education. And, you know, like, I'm like, okay, like I can go with all of these don't really strike me. The one that really hit me, and I remember actually reading about it at the airport, and I was like, what? Like, it was this concept of being able to feel in control of how you use your time. And it was such a light bulb moment for me, because when you think about it, time is literally the only non-renewable resource you have. And so how we spend it is actually crucial. Like, do you spend it towards things that make you happy or do you not? And then tied into that, like once you kind of look at that, then all these other things come in, like this concept of intention, like being intentional with your time. And like, I'm sure you see a lot of this, like this hustle culture that we're in, like the more tech we have to make things easier to do and shrink the time, we add more to our plate. And we have this thing that we just like keep adding and adding. And like at some point it's like, you've got to take back control, like, and make a decision about what and with whom you are spending your time on. And I really think that is the biggest key, because almost everything else comes after that. I feel like even if you're like, oh, health is one of the pillars, but to like add healthy habits and change your lifestyle, you have to take control of your time to do that, because then you'll always run out of time to do it, right? So I feel like if I had to like pick one absolute thing, I would pick time.
That's really good. I'm remembering, I think, did you have some photos of this place that you shared with
it
the
was
like
very
road
funny.
signs and stuff?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
They
what
like
was an
to
example?
sprinkle humor. I wish I had it memorized. I don't. But they're just
That's fine.
they're just like, they're very like happy. What's the word? I'm losing my words.
All that. Man,
happy,
you sound like me. That's what I do. Happy-go-lucky, lighthearted.
Yes, all those. And I remember like, honestly, I feel like, I mean, so when we were there, they have this, so because it's in the mountains, like everything is in the mountains. Every road you drive by is in the mountains. Like they don't have fences on all of the roads. And so the first snowfall of the year, I think people just need to adapt to driving on snow again. And so it's dangerous. Like it's literally a cliff. And so the first day there is a snowfall where snow stays on the ground, it's a public holiday for everyone. Everyone just gets to take a day off. And first of all, like the government there actually is like, we care more about your safety than finishing whatever governmental project we have you building or doing. So like, it doesn't matter, just take a day off. Like it's actually not worth it, which is again, like we don't see that here. Right. And so you would think like, I don't know what's it like where you are, but wait, where are you?
Detroit.
Oh, right. You get lots of snow.
Yes.
And so when we have snow days, everybody hides at home. And it's like, oh, I'm going to like watch TV or I'll catch up on work, or it's like an extra day to do whatever. There, everyone was on the streets, adults, kids, everything, snowball fights. Just snowball fights. Everyone was throwing snowballs. Like our van got like, it was like our driver rolled down the window and was like taunting this person who like threw a snowball into our car. Like everyone was just laughing, and they brought like umbrellas out to like fight with, like to block the snowballs. And I was just sitting there being like, wow, like, they just live differently. I mean, at least for sure in Toronto, and I put money on this for Detroit too. It's like, oh, like I have an extra day. I guess I'll just sit home and watch Netflix, or like I'll just catch up on work. And these people are out there having snowball fights. And I was like, I love this. Like, I love that that's the mentality.
That's so good. I want to go there.
It's really, it's very peaceful. That's like the word that I can describe them is like, it's very peaceful. Like people just have like a different pace to life. But yeah, they get to control how they use their time there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like, man, that is so powerful. I'm just reflecting, my kids are getting bigger, and I feel like if I ever do get anxious, it's because, I'm like, man, I've got 2 summers left with my son before he's college bound. And, our youngest, I'm like, man, she just had her 8th birthday. And I'm like, oh man, time's slipping away. Yeah. And so like, as soon as I start feeling like I don't have control, man, that I can get very unhealthy, like pretty quick there. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think entrepreneurs fall into this all the time, because there's never an end to growing the business, right? Like you always have a next step. There's always something. If you're not launching something, you can go back and optimize another thing. Like there's always something to do. And if we get sucked into that and we don't start thinking about the other things that really truly matter, I think we can become quite unfulfilled and unhappy, even if like financially we're successful.
Yeah, man, that's really powerful. I'm in the middle. I'm leading this 5-day challenge, and that was one of the things I said yesterday. I'm like, there is endless work. Mm-hmm. You described it so well. You can always optimize. If you're doing nothing, it's like, well, I could hop on social media and market. Create a post. Like there's literally always something that can be done. So, I have a good friend, Graham Cochran, who challenged me a long time ago. He's like, could you take Fridays off and just like not, and be more efficient Monday through Thursday? And that just started me thinking very differently about the business. And so I just wonder if what entrepreneurs need is just a kick in the pants that says, listen, you literally have to create work hours for yourself, even though you're your own boss and there's nobody telling you. Maybe you have a significant other that's like, man, I wish you didn't work so much.
Yeah.
But outside of that voice, like you really should shut it off at this time. And that means that you're not doing, X, Y, Z. You're not checking notifications for work stuff after this time. And you just have to work within these parameters. What else? What other options? What should people do that are their own boss? Because it just seems endless. It is like, and that can feel very just like, oh, I'm just tied to it, and I gotta serve my business. I gotta show up for it always.
Yeah, I think, a very practical way of thinking about this is if you work like that, it's only a matter of time before the next non-renewable resource starts going, and that's your health. Like, it's only a matter of time. I've never seen anyone like work all the time at full speed and not eventually burn out. It's not how our bodies are designed to work. And so I take a look at it. It's like, why did you go into the entrepreneurial world? It was flexibility. It was being able to live the lifestyle that comes with, So where is that in your life? And you can't, it's no one else's responsibility but your own. Like, it really is. And I was that person, right? Like, I teach at the naturopathic college. I'm running a business. The work is literally endless. But if I don't put an end to it at the end of the day, it's actually, my daughter's 3. It's very obvious when I don't put an end to it, because then she starts acting out. Like, she'll start throwing more tantrums because I haven't spent time with her. And it's not, I don't even think it's not like she's doing it on purpose, right? Like, at that age, they're just literally responding to something. And so for her, it's a response to a lack of connection. Like, I could push it a day. If I do it 2 days, we're gonna, 3 days, and we're gonna have meltdowns, right? And so it's like the biggest reminder for me. Like, I chose this because I wanted to live a particular lifestyle for both me and my family. Yeah. And Mike said it. Mike Kim, you mentioned him earlier in this episode, but I remember he said something in one of our calls, and he was like, well, at what level of success are you allowed to start living that lifestyle? And I remember just all of us being like, like, what level of success? And if you think about it, it's, first of all, either we don't have it defined. We actually either don't have a definition in our mind, or it's like some arbitrary number that we made up because we somehow decided that was success, right? Like, it's all arbitrary. And so I feel like the sooner you take control of that and like put parameters and boundaries around your work, first of all, productivity laws state that you'll actually just be more productive and get it done faster. So there's that. And I think the sooner, one, I actually think you'll be more successful because you'll just be forced to make good decisions about where you spend your time. And two, you'll just be happier and more fulfilled. I haven't seen a single person who's like, I am so fulfilled working 80 hours a week. I've never heard of that. And so the sooner you take control of that, the sooner you will actually be happier. And it's really interesting. When I was doing this, you help other people grow their businesses. So, everybody tells me, you're like, if you have a business, you're supposed to solve a pain point. Like, you have to solve. And I was just remember being like, what pain point am I trying to solve? Like, happiness feels so, I actually said this to Mike. It was like, happiness is something I'm passionate about, but it feels so like not practical. Like, I get totally, like, we all want to be happy, yes, but like it just, I'm like, what kind of pain point? Like, I don't know what I like. This is weird. I don't know how to talk about it. And Mike being Mike was very encouraging in his own ways. And so, but like, and I just kind of, I was like, I'm going to look into this. I'm actually going to look into this. What happens when people are happier? Like, what's the actual stats around this? I was actually floored. Like, people's immune systems are better. You don't get sick as much. You sleep better. You make better health decisions. You have happier, more fulfilling relationships. Salespeople, and not just if you're only in sales, but like if you sell anything, if you're a happy person, you can boost your sales by anywhere between 37 to 50%. It's insane why we don't talk about this more. Like, I just, and back to the whole question you asked me right at the beginning about the chief happiness officer, I'm like, I want to be that person for entrepreneurs and executives. Like, I feel like if I could share this message more with the world, people will be healthier, they'll make better decisions, their businesses will be more successful. Like, I don't know, I recently wrote this and I was like, I really want to turn happiness into the most utilized tool of positive impact in the world. Because I really think like happier people just do good things.
Yeah. I'm like resonating so much with all of this. So good. I have a strong desire, a heavy burden as I work with all these filmmakers, you know, that none of us went to business school. None of us started or had a dream of like, yeah, one day I'm going to have my own business and it's going to be video. It's just, we fell into it and then we're trying to figure out all the business stuff. It's like, we're good storytellers. We're good at capturing images and, you know, making cool videos and whatever. But then eventually it's like, oh, I'm not charging enough. Oh, like if I want to do this, like I need to charge more so I don't have to work so hard. And it's like, oh no, I got to keep working hard because now I got a backlog of videos I need to edit. And it's just like this, you know, this endless cycle. I sort of feel like, man, I'm just trying to, I want to know how can I help these people even more realize that you can't work 6 days a week. You can't work 7 days a week. You can't work 12-hour days nonstop. Yes, your health will definitely be impacted. Your effectiveness is being impacted. It's not sustainable, and you're actually not bringing your whole self to the world when you're not creating healthier boundaries to just say, I need to stop and I need to, because there's so much more. This work is very, I mean, the kind of films that people in this community are creating are life-changing, right? So there is this like calling of like, wow, this is very powerful, very important kind of work, but at the expense of like your own health, like, I'm struggling. I'm fired up right now.
So I'll say this, in the pillars of happiness, I'll run through them quickly and then I'll answer this question because I think it's quite relevant too. So in the pillars of happiness, the happiness is the acronym for the 9 pillars. And so if I run through it quickly, it's H is for health, A is for authenticity, the first P is for purpose, the second P is productivity, the I is inner peace, the N is nature, the E is emotional intelligence, the first S is social connection, and the second S is sustainability, which is related to making sustainable decisions on a personal level, but also like a global level. So when
just pause real quick. I just want to say, you know, the fact that you were able to use that word and have something for I mean, that is a feat in and of itself. So just be proud. That is pretty cool. Okay.
Thanks. It was a shower moment. It was a shower moment. All good ideas come in the shower. You should have seen me. This is probably too much information, but like I was washing my hair and it had like soap everywhere, and I was like, I need to write this down or else I will forget. And I like ran out of the shower with soap and everything. I was just like, this needs to get written down before I forget it all. And then I like dripped everywhere, and then like paper is all wet.
It was all worth it though.
Yeah, it's like paper's all wet. So I'm trying to write on it, and then like went back into the shower to like, you know. Anyways. Now, yeah, I've told that story before, and people were like, have you heard of shower crayons? I'm like, no, what's that? And they're like, you take... I'm like, oh, yeah. All right. Well, there you go.
Genius.
You learn something new. But I'll say this. So when I work with clients, we take a look at all of these pillars. And the idea is that when you start to evaluate each of these pillars, and I have questions associated with each of these pillars. Yeah. And so as we evaluate them, you give yourself a score on each of those pillars. So for example, these people who are producing like life-changing video work, they're fulfilling their purpose. It's great. The score is super high. Where are we on the health score? I'm not saying you got to lower the purpose score in order to make the health thing happen, but it's just a really good way to kind of look at it and be like, okay, I've like thrown all of this. Like, do I feel like inner peace? Have I started affecting some of my social connections, right? Am I making sustainable decisions for myself? Like no one, and we like science has studied this, like no one who is like on their deathbed is like, man, I really wished I worked more. Like no one ever said that. And so ultimately, and the longest study ever run on human beings. It's like the third generation that it's still being run. It's a fact that your like loneliness, it's as bad for you as smoking, I don't know, it's like 15 cigarettes a day or like something. Like it's just like social connection is the one thing that is going to improve a lot of things. So if you are like, I'm all in on the purpose and I'm all in on the productivity, which actually, I don't actually think that's productivity. I think it's like a misuse of the word productivity. But like, let's say that you're like, oh, I'm like working so much and I'm like fulfilling my purpose. But at the, end of the day, you go to bed at night and you're like, man, I'm like exhausted, but like not in a good way. And man, I haven't like, I'm not taking care of my health and my energy is starting to tank and I'm getting grumpy and I'm not spending time with my family. Then you've doubled down on one of the pillars, but not really taking care of the other ones. And I think it's always fluctuation. Nobody scores perfect on every one of these pillars. There's always a fluctuation, but I always check back using this because then I think it gives us a sense to be like, okay, like, like just I've said yes to a lot of things that I actually feel like saying no to, right? And I'm not speaking up for myself as much as I need to. And then it's like the authenticity pillar ranks a little bit lower. And then you're like, all right, like I need to go back and change that. I need to like address the fact that this has been happening. And so it's always a really great checkpoint. And I think like, I mean, again, like happiness is one of those like esoteric, like feeling kind of things, and everybody experiences happiness differently, but we know that there's specific things that do increase our happiness. I wanted to make it practical. Like I wanted to have a way for people to like look at it and kind of be like, oh, this is the thing that I haven't done in the last little while. That's going to increase my happiness again.
That's good. And then do you have like a regular rhythm for yourself where you're able to, before you feel like, man, I'm feeling off, like to just check in with each of these, and is there an efficient way to do it, or is it kind of like, no, you got to kind of be at a spot where you're not really healthy, and then you look at the list and you're like, oh, it's the letter P. What's your recommended way to get through that regularly?
I think it's one of those things where if you like just start realizing, you're like, oh, like
yeah.
At the end, like it's a reflection piece, but I often reflect at the end of the day. It's like, did I spend my day well?
Yeah.
Like, and it's not, did I do everything I wanted to do? It's like, did I spend my day well? And I think that's like a good starting point for me. And then I start to be like, okay, like I'm starting to feel a little bit like, oh, I haven't like seen my best friend in a while. Like maybe I need to reach out, to her, or like, oh, you know what? Like embarrassingly, I'm the naturopathic doctor and I haven't exercised in about 2 weeks. I guess I probably should go for a walk. Just, there's no perfection around this. I always feel like it's a reflection point. And the question I often ask myself is like, did I spend my day well? And it's a good, and then I kind of, at the end of each week, I kind of go like, did I spend my week well? And if I didn't, like, what's the thing that I'm going to commit to next week? And that's going to bring this back into balance a bit.
That's really good. Naturopathic. Did I get it?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, there's a couple of different like journaling techniques and starting the day, gratitude, sort of thinking through, who's one person I can encourage or reach out to, or, something like those kinds of questions. And then the shutdown routine as well. Like, did I show up how I wanted to show up today? And thinking through that. Love how you put that in context, because it can feel overwhelming of like, okay, there's 9 things that I need to, start thinking through that and checking in every day. But yeah, like if you're asking yourself of the questions like, was I the kind of dad, the kind of husband, the kind of friend, the kind of boss that I needed to be, that I want to be? And if not, then what is that thing? Journaling, self-reflection, making time to do that. I think that's really good advice. I had a question from our community, from Jordan, and he was really curious about home office and or office health. He's talking about air, water, food quality, and his question is about speaking the environment that we work in. It's like real focused here. He's talking about mental health, physical health. He's talking about he's got friends who are suffering from mental health issues only to find that they live in or work in an environment with mold or toxin issues. Like anything you can speak into there?
This is a really interesting topic. There's like a whole discipline in science that studies environment and environmental toxicities and how it affects our health. So I think mold is really interesting. The really interesting, first of all, like nothing in science and our health is single faceted. Like it's never just the one thing, right? And the way to think about this is like, we do know that mold toxicity can affect things like brain fog and energy and anxiety and depression. Like there are some ties that we're starting to find. The science around this isn't very old. Like it's kind of a newer thing that people are studying. But like I was in Costa Rica in May, and we were staying at this beautiful resort. I was there for a business conference, and it was in the middle of the mountains, and there was mold everywhere. Like everywhere. Like the walls had mold. Like it's a beautiful resort. Like walls had mold, like the planks had mold, like my bathing suit never dried because it's damp there. Like it's Costa Rica. You're in the middle of like a rainforest, or you're just, it doesn't dry.
Yeah.
People in Costa Rica do not have a 100% rate of like anxiety and depression and health issues. So I'm always a little bit like, I'm sure mold, like we know that there's a correlation. But then what are they doing that's different? Because they are all exposed to mold. And yet they don't have like 100% rate of everybody has depression and anxiety. So like what's going on there? Is it that, their system is buffering it because they grew up there and they're used to it? Maybe. We don't know. Is it that their health is elevated in other ways? So for example, they're very like communal. They do a lot of like, social connection, and they eat a lot of fresh food, and like it's less processed than what we typically see in North America, like in the States and Canada. Like, does that buffer some of the other things that are going on? I mean, I don't have a solid, and no one's actually ever studied this, but I always wonder because, and people are just like, I mean, I've heard other people like corn, it's horrible for you. Like, it's like the most toxic thing you eat. I'm like, well, what about all the people who eat like corn tortillas? Like, they're not all like, it's just, it's never one thing. Like I am immediately suspicious when somebody tries to sell me it's one thing. And I'm like, it's never one thing. But it's very interesting to be like, okay, well, we know that mold affects us a certain way in Canada and the States. So like, why doesn't it affect other populations? And what are they doing differently to buffer it? And maybe it's because they eat they eat fresh foods a lot. And I don't know, maybe like that buffer, maybe the fact that they're just healthier people, they walk a lot more than we do, or maybe like they eat as a family and with friends, and like maybe that buffers it. I don't really know. Like if I were to, if it's like a single question, like is mold associated with, then yes, mold toxicity has been associated with like brain fog and mental health. Is it the only thing? I don't know.
This has been awesome. I want to talk like if from the filmmaker, corporate videographer, I'm an entrepreneur, knowing some of the struggles, that people face, the hurdles to experience happiness and fulfillment. If there's one other area that we can circle around that you're like, this is another pretty important one. They're all important, right? But if there's one more, just with the context of knowing who we're speaking to, is there one that you're like, yeah, this is another one, Ryan, that people should really think about, and maybe here's a tool or technique to do it differently.
I do this challenge for people I work with. I call it the authenticity challenge. Living an authentic life is one of those things that I don't know a lot of people who live 100% true to themselves, because sometimes we have to do things we don't like, and that's just, it is what it is kind of thing. Like, it's fine. But like, I think we as human beings, we don't often make the mistake where we go completely against our core values and beliefs. Sometimes we do, but we learn very quickly, because usually the consequence of that is quite strong. And so we pull back and we know not to do that. But I do think all the little white lies compound. All the little things. And if you think about it in terms of like a relationship, one or two things, it's like you let it go. But then when you do one or two things like all the time, it starts to compound, and then the relationship, there's tension. There's a lot of tension, right? So I do this challenge with people where I'm like, I just want you to, you don't even have to change what you say. I actually just want you to go for 1 week and count how many little white lies you say. And there's no judgment. Like, you can come back and be like, well, that was 542. I'll be like, okay. Like, there's no judgment. But it speaks to how much of your life are you living for yourself, and how much of your life you're living for other people, right? And for those people who are listening to this who might be like employed, and and you're like, well, I don't have the flexibility to like just tell my boss no, or like, whatever. That's fine. Like, I totally get that. I'm also like, I have a salaried position as well. Like, I get that. But there's ways you can talk about it, right? It could be like this, like, yes, I understand the importance of this, so I will take it on this time. Like, it's not necessarily something that I think the strongest in. So if you can give me some support, like maybe I'll be able to, like there's always ways around kind of it. But even just the fact that you express it is helpful because you're not pretending that that's the thing that you love doing. Because if you do, they'll just give you more of that, right? Like so you just you have to honor your own truth and speak up about it. And it's such a fascinating exercise because most people come back and be like, wow, that happened way more often than I thought it would. And again, you don't have to like change your answer. You just have to be aware how often you are doing it in all the different dimensions of your life. And then we just go through that and say, okay, well, then based on this, what are the areas that we can maybe tweak a little bit so you start feeling like you're living more authentically towards what you want. And inevitably people do this and they're like, wow, I feel so much more confident because I'm speaking up and like standing up for myself. I'm like, yeah.
What this is like my own ignorance. Because I'm like, I don't. Do I tell any white lies? Like, what is it? What's an example of a white lie? Or maybe you've noticed already. I've already
like the most common one I would say is like saying yes to something you actually want to say no to. I think we do that a lot in our business. Clients that you're like, you have an inkling that you're like, oh, this may not be the best fit, but I'll do it. And like, sometimes you have to, right? That's fine. Like, I've started a business too. Sometimes you have to, and that's fine. But like, you got to catch yourself how often you're doing it. If you're finding that you're doing it a lot at work, then at least make sure you're being very authentic to yourself everywhere else.
Okay. And like, give me a couple other examples here.
And not speaking up about preferences is another one. Like people are kind of like, oh, like, well, what do you want to eat? Oh, whatever. Dating, early dating. This happens so much, right?
Gosh.
Like,
yeah.
I love eating that. And you're like, no, I hate eating it. Like, what? Why did you say that? You don't think they'll discover that like 5 more dates down the road? Just say it. You're like, I don't do that. Like, it's fine. Like, it's just... I think totally like, early dating is something that, we do that a lot of. And I think with kids too, like I am practicing, saying to my daughter, like, I didn't like that. Like that was hurtful, and so it's just instead of shielding her and like, I don't know. I mean, she's 3, she's my only, maybe this isn't the right decision, but I just feel like she needs to hear the truth. And sometimes she doesn't understand it and we do our best to explain it, but I still think telling her is better than not.
Yeah, that's really good. It makes me think about like not every client is a right fit client, right? And that's okay, right? And getting a no as soon as possible, like realizing like early on, like if you realize like this is not a fit, like man, do yourself a favor and do that person a favor by not white lying, but just like you know what? I think there's a couple other companies I could refer you to. It's probably it's just not a great fit, and that's okay, and that's totally fine. That makes a lot more sense to me.
It is fine. Like there's a scarcity mindset that we get into when we're starting our business that makes us nervous, and it's like, but I always feel like doing it with good intention brings it back in spades. Like if you're not going to end up being able to serve this client the way they need to be, you might as well refer them to someone, your friend that you trust just got business. Like they're like the client's going to be infinitely happier. You've cleared up space in your calendar to do something that does matter and align with you. Like I think a lot of times it comes down to that scarcity mindset, which I totally understand at the beginning of a business, and just, just be mindful. Like if you're like, there's one client that's a maybe and iffy, and I said yes, but there's 5, that's really great. Then that's great, right? But if you're like, there's 6 and 6 of them are not, then no, it's not going to go well.
I love that. So good. Ellen, this has been so fun. Look how happy I am. Where can people find out more about you? How can they find out more about the 9 pillars?
Yeah, I'd love to offer a free guide. I think it's called the 9 essential questions to ask for a happier life. It goes through these 9 pillars, the 9 questions, and then one tip or one thing you could, like one action step you can take based on these 9 pillars. So I think you have the download link somewhere, Ryan. So I'm sure that'll get posted. It's drellenwong.com/happiness questions. So I'm sure we'll find that in the show notes. Otherwise, you can always get in touch with me on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook. It's at The Joy Avenue. If you don't catch the download link and you want the guide, just connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to send it over to you.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much. Seriously, this work that you're doing is really, really important. I took some solid notes. I'm excited to talk to my family later, and I'm actually going to make my family. I never make them listen to my episodes, but I want them to hear this one. I really appreciate your perspective.
I really appreciate you saying that.
All right, friend, if you want access to the show notes, the things that Dr. Ellen Wong and I talked about, you can download the show notes or get access to them by going to studiosherpas.com/321, because this was our 321th episode. Hey, if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, leave me a comment. Let me know what stood out. What are you walking away with from this episode? If there's a topic or somebody else that you think I should have on this show, then let me know that. I would love to hear from you. You can always email me, ryan@studiosherpas.com. Or I'm on the socials at Ryan Coral, Koral, like under the sea, but spelled totally different. That's what I have to say to people when they're spelling. It's literally, I can tell people before I even tell them how to spell my name, I tell them with a K, and they don't even start writing it, but they write a C. And I'm like, I said K. But the nice thing about a C is you can just add a line and it turns into a K really easily. Okay, anyway, make sure if you have not watched the Six-Figure Filmmaker Workshop that you do that. Remember, the link is studiosherpas.com/workshop. That is my gift to you. If you want to review the show, you can do that too. I hope you have an incredibly amazing, prosperous, profitable, joy-filled, happy week. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Until then, onward and upward, my friend. We'll see you.